come from a place of learning, come from a place of receiving and opening up, not assuming anything about my clients or what their upbringing is or their background is. I'm here to learn from them because I'm a human being as well. 'Cause I don't know everything, right? And I am here to support them with their own goals, and I'm not here to put my goals on top of them, right? I'm here to help their own path, their own unique path that they're on.
Welcome back to Have a Map, where we talk all things career. I'm your host, Mamadou Njai. And for today, we are going to be taking a journey all across the world with one of our interns. But I will say this about this specific intern. Bife has been amazing to work with, and I have a lot of respect and just a lot of respect for Bife because she's working on a completely different time zone than us, and being able to balance that and still go to school and work on the time zone. She'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's a lot of respect for that, and a lot of people don't understand the sacrifices that people make for their education. So I always like to put that out there and give a lot of respect to our interns before we get started. But Bife, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Thank you for saying that, Mo. So hi, my name is Bifei Ba. I'm currently in China right now, and I'm doing my internship in dim events as a graphic designer. But I have a strong interest in the field of art therapy, which is what I'm studying in college right now.
Beautiful. And where do you go to school?
Oh, I go to school in the School of Art Institute of Chicago.
Beautiful, beautiful. And as we transition, we are going to introduce our guest for today. Yu Jung is our guest for today, and I will let her uh, explain a little bit about what she does and who she is and where she's calling in from.
Thank you for introducing me. I'm so excited to be here, first of all. My name is Youhjung, and I am a board certified art therapist. I am currently in Maryland right now, but I have a business, art therapy business, that's completely online. It's called Thirsty for Art, and I've built that maybe like a year, maybe almost 2 years ago. And since then, I've been kind of working online with people, doing online sessions. And my business started from my YouTube channel, actually, of the same name, Thirsty for Art, where I shared all about art therapy. And that's how I started my business. But before then, I was working as an art therapist, as an employee, being in different agencies, community centers, organizations, and hired to provide art therapy services for lots of different people, mainly adults. And kind of my focus or specialty was people who were struggling with addiction. But yeah, I did a lot of different art therapy work, and now it's doing that through my own business, Thirsty for Art. So yeah.
I'm so excited to hear that because I remember in one of my art therapy classes we were required to watch your video as a part of our assignment, and we actually did the activity you suggested. Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome to hear. Yeah, I try to share a lot of what art therapy could look like, or kind of a similar activities on YouTube, kind of broken down by step, so that it's very easy to do for just for the general public. And one of the reasons why I do that is because I wanted to raise awareness about art therapy. And I just feel like as I was working as an art therapist, I felt like a lot of people don't know what that is. So I just kind of wanted to let people have a taste of what that is and educate and advocate for this field. So yeah, it's cool to hear that from you.
Beautiful. And when we talk about art therapy, can we, just for the listeners, because we have a lot of students in here who might have interest. Obviously, Bife is one of those students, but for our other listeners as well, how do you define art therapy? Because I don't know, can it be defined? That's a question I guess I have to ask myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like there are so many different definitions out there and different kind of perspectives of what art therapy is, even amongst our therapists themselves. It's like we look at it differently depending on what kind of work we do. But I would say, in general, art therapy is like is a field that combines art and therapy, basically. So it's using art as a way for to heal or to help people express their feelings and thoughts, and also understand themselves and heal through that process of making art. So the goal is to really improve our mental health through the use of art, and the art therapist is there to hold the space and guide the process, and really help the individual get to that therapeutic goal that they have. So I hope that kind of explains a little bit. I know it's
Nope. That's
yeah.
that's perfect. No, that explains a lot. That explains a lot.
I have a question for you. So, is there any difference between your practice between the time before COVID and after COVID? Well, kind of after COVID, right now.
Mhm. So your question is, did I practice before COVID, and how?
Yeah, and
Mhm,
if there's any difference.
mhm. Yeah. So I think it's interesting because I actually started my business, online business, before COVID started. So I was just doing 100% online work before COVID, and then COVID happened, and and then I see a lot of other art therapists who weren't doing online work now transitioning into online work, maybe pure online work, or maybe like a hybrid of doing a little bit of in person and then a little bit of online. So for me, it wasn't a lot of difference. I think that because I, started online before the COVID. But I do think that nowadays people are more online, and they're searching for, um, ways to express themselves, ways to connect with themselves a little bit more in a different way than before. So I do find that there's some more interest maybe from people in regards to art therapy and what that could look like for them and how it could help them. So I guess it's a little bit of a increased interest from people. But in terms of what I do, it's kind of the same. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Because,
Mhm.
well, I feel like this online approach is giving people more accessibility. Like for some people, they don't have time to go to art therapy sessions, or some of them might have some physical conditions that kind of prevent them from going to somewhere else. And I think starting from the pandemic, everything's not everything, but many stuff are going online. So I think that's giving people more opportunities
Mhm.
to get in touch with art therapy. But did you just start it from by creating YouTube channels, or is there any practice involved for that?
So I started my business after I started my YouTube, and then I saw that there were demands from people, and I had a community of people. I had a group of people who really kind of wanted more in-depth stuff from me, not just kind of watching a YouTube video and then following the steps, but really they wanted kind of like a custom help for themselves. So that's how I started to offer some services online. And it was great because, you know, YouTube is online, right? Everybody can, well, most people can search. And so I could, when I offered online sessions, it really fit well because my audience or my community was very global. And now that I have online offerings, my clients are global. So yeah, so that's the thing I really actually love most about being online, that the fact that I can help people all over the world, in Europe, in Asia, in Australia, even in the Americas, and before I started doing YouTube, that's the limitations that I felt a lot. Like I could only practice in this state as an art therapist, and I could only practice in this city or in this local area. And the only clients I could see were people just around me, right? So that's the limitations I felt as an art therapist. And I guess the online world was kind of a solution for me, an answer for that. And yeah, it's interesting to see that a lot of things are now shifting online. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's so good to hear. Have you ever, you talked about you have your practice is based on people with a lot of cultural backgrounds, but I just want to ask, have you ever encountered any cultural differences that influence the conversation you have with your clients?
Yeah, that's a really awesome question. So I would say there are definitely cultural differences between myself and a client who might be living in a totally different country on the other side of the world, right? There are cultural differences, but I think the most often thing that I experience is the commonalities, actually. That's when I am more surprised by, because I know there will be differences. So I know that going into the session, going into the service, but when I know that someone from a whole different country, what they're going through and their cultural background is, and hearing that struggle and things like that, and knowing my background and my cultural upbringing, how that I can see a lot of similarities. And it's something that I wouldn't expect, right? Because they're from a whole different country, and I'm from a whole different place. So I would say actually commonalities are more surprising for me. And how I usually approach helping people of different backgrounds is that I come from a place of not knowing. So this is what I have kind of learned during my art therapy training, and that is to just come from a place of learning, come from a place of receiving and opening up, not assuming anything about my clients or what their upbringing is or their background is. I'm here to learn from them because I'm a human being as well. 'Cause I don't know everything, right? And I am here to support them with their own goals, and I'm not here to put my goals on top of them, right? I'm here to help their own path, their own unique path that they're on. So I find that approach helps a lot, just coming from a place of not knowing and not assuming and being open to learning new things. And I find myself growing a lot from being that place of just kind of being humble and being open. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also what my professor always tell us is to keep keep an open mind and not to like emphasize this power diet between a therapist and a client. There's yeah, we are all like having a conversation on equal basis,
Mhm.
and I think that's very important to give this kind of empowerment to the clients.
So true, so true. I think just to add to that, I think that in a therapist or helper and client relationship, there can always, or most often, there is like a hierarchy, right? Which is a lot of times based on our cultural upbringing, our society, and it's just how things are done in that system, right? And so I think that a lot of us helpers and therapists, including our therapists, are trying to like have the playing field equal and really actively try to oppose that kind of hierarchy that's kind of, most often inherent in that kind of system or relationship. So yeah, I'm so glad that we can bring this up in this conversation.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful of what you two have been talking about. One thing I always think about is, you having building that community and then now having clients within that space. How do you balance the different time zones, right? And this idea of, we always talk about like self-care on the podcast, and I always talk about it being more of a journey, less of a state of being. So for you, how do you balance that with, like, I think you said Australia you have a client, which is on a way different time zone versus
True.
you. So how do you balance all of that and keep it growing?
Yeah, honestly, it is one of the challenges of being online and just having an online business. And so I put myself as a priority, my own self-care as a priority, my own health as a priority. Um, so I try to have availabilities in my schedule that fits me. And then the clients are welcome to, find what they can work with among, all the time slots that are available, if that makes sense. And a lot of the times there are like overlap between my clients' availabilities and my availabilities. That's what I have found so far. We can always work something out. But the other thing that I also do is to actually have a contractor. So I do have an art therapist who is on my Thirsty for Art team who can also see clients, and she's also in a different time zone. So she can most likely see a lot of clients in her similar time zones, or maybe even a client whom I cannot see on my own time, but it would work for her. So that has been really helpful for me. Um, but I think it's really a matter of just knowing that there are limits to what we do online, right? And also with my physical body, right? With my health, there are limits. I recognize that. And if I cannot see someone, it is unfortunate. I can refer them to someone else. I know there are definitely other places where people can go to for help. Um, and yeah, I think it's just a matter of thinking that, I'm not here to catch everybody. I'm just here to serve um, in a way that fits for me and the client. So um, kind of having that kind of mindset, I think really helps a lot.
Definitely. And can we maybe take it back on, how did you get started even in art therapy? Because I believe what I've heard sometimes is it's a newer
Mhm.
type of therapy. And when I say newer, maybe the last 20 years or so, right? Is
Mhm.
that around the time zone?
Yeah, I would say like 40s to 50s were the time period where art therapy was kind of founded in a way, or the word art therapy became like a thing. Before then, it wasn't even a concept. It wasn't even an idea. Um, People may have been using art for a long time since we were living in caves, right? For lots of different reasons, for expressing ourselves, for communicating with other people, or for recording things, right? And also maybe for therapeutic reasons too, to just because it feels good, just because it relieves stress. Um, but I think it was the 40s and 50s, when you look at US history, at least, because it might be different in different countries. But in US history, it would be the 40s and 50s where it became a thing in a field. They founded a master's program on specifically art therapy. So I got kind of exposed to the idea of art therapy in undergrad, actually, when I was maybe like second year undergrad student in college. I was studying studio art, just purely studio art. But I was having doubts about that. I was thinking, what do I really do after I graduate? Do I just become an artist? But there was something about just being an artist that I was feeling like it didn't really satisfy the thing that I want, which was to have connections with people directly in an intimate way, to be able to see someone, to be able to have one-on-one conversations, things like that, that I thought that was what I really wanted, and really helping people. So I really kind of focused on like that human connection, that conversation, that intimacy. But I still wanted to keep the art, right? So I wanted to combine, and that's when I found out about art therapy. It was probably maybe I found it from a book or internet search. It was random, but I did get to really dive deeper into what art therapy is by shadowing art therapists in my local area at a hospital, volunteering, and kind of interning a little bit under an art therapist as well. So that's how I kind of like exposed myself to what art therapy work might look like. And I decided during my undergrad, maybe third year or fourth year, to I think third year to really pursue art therapy. And so I actually double majored in psychology. I didn't have much to do in terms of like adding on another major, because I did like I took a lot of credits already. So it wasn't too much of an effort to double major. So I double majored and went right into our therapy master's program after I graduated from my college. So that's how I kind of started. But I know that a lot of art therapists do start, um, or they come from a background of art, and occasionally from psychology. But yeah.
Wow, that is a journey. Studio art to art therapy, double major. That's beautiful. What school did you go to? Was it in the Maryland area as well?
So for undergrad, I went to University of Texas at Austin. It's a public school in Austin. And for the art therapy master's degree, I went to School of Visual Arts in New York.
And through that journey, I kind of want to navigate us to how did you know? Because I know this is always a struggle for people. How did you know when to start your own business? Because
Mhm.
people are always like, I don't know if this is the right time for me. I don't know if I'm interested, or maybe I am interested, but how do you even get to that space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a great question, and hopefully my answer can help someone out there. But yeah, I think that if you have enough experience being employed, right, um, and you have thought a lot of things, you have reflected, and you've kind of formed your own kind of opinion or thought, or just you have your own kind of take on things, let's say, um, that's different from how things are done within employed settings, then I think that would be a great kind of hint that you will be more successful or satisfied by doing your own work, because that's what I have experienced when I was employed in so many different places and organizations under different titles too. What I've experienced is that some of the things that were done in those places were not really aligned with my own values, and also how I wanted to do things were different from how the agency wanted to do things. So when I realized that it is stressful, right? And so if you experience a lot of stress or maybe even burnout, although not 100% of the burnout means you need to get out of it, but if you do though, and you know what you really want, right? You have to know, like, you have to evaluate, is this what I truly want? Being in this setting or doing this kind of work in this place, kind of evaluating that. And if you come to the conclusion that, no, really, I actually want a really different kind of work, or actually want to do it in my own way, in my own hours or whatever that is, then I think that is a big kind of sign that, you know, being self-employed is a better path for you. But that journey, or that time it takes to come to that conclusion, might take a while, I would say. I know, and it's not an easy thing, definitely. Some people are like right out of the gate, they start working and they realize, oh, this is not for me, and they switch to self-employed. But some people, it takes a while to actually learn, wait, maybe this is not the way I want to be working. Or maybe I have a totally different vision for myself. And so, yeah, I feel like it's everybody's different. So they have to really listen to themselves. Like, you know, not listen to what other people are saying, what is good for you, or what you should be doing, right? But really listening to your own kind of intuition and inner kind of voice about what do you want, what is aligned with you, and then trusting that and going for that, if that means being self-employed. Yeah, so I hope that kind of helps someone out there.
Yeah, thank you so much. Because I used to major in um, studio art also, and yeah, I'm having this confusion in my mind. Should I stay in my safety zone to stick with studio art, or should I pursue my art therapy dream? So yeah, that really helps a lot. Thank you. And I remember you mentioned that self-care is a major part of your practice. And I just want to ask if you have any suggestions for, in relation to the method of self-care and what people can use to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I know not everybody will benefit the exact same way that I do, right? And I won't benefit from what other people do. So I think it's really case by case, whatever fits you is the best way. But I find that being in nature really helps me out in terms of self-care. Just having a fresh breath of air outside, having sunshine, having greens around me, and just exposing myself to nature really helps me out. There is some kind of shift in your mood and in your way of being when you just be outside and in nature. And when you're in nature also, you get to exercise a little bit more, which always helps with mood. And the other thing I think really helps with self-care is, of course, as an art therapist, I would say art. And I also employ art making as a way of self-care with myself as well. Um, and what I usually do is to really just choose whatever materials that I find I'm pulled towards, whatever I like in that moment. I will use that to do like kind of intuitive art making. So whether that's drawing or painting, I usually go for painting because that's kind of my go-to medium. And you know, I've done that a lot during my undergrad as well. So that's just my favorite thing. But I oftentimes use mandala as a kind of or circles as a way to just structure my art making. But whatever way really fits you, I would recommend. So from the decision of choosing materials to doing what to do with it, thinking what to do with it, I think that's totally an individual decision, and you will have to kind of intuitively see what works for you. But the one thing I would say would be really helpful for art making as a way of self-care is to not worry too much about the results, to let go of the product or the results, and just focus on the process, focus on the lines, focus on the colors, focus on how you feel as you do the art, not whether this is going to turn out well or not. So if you can just focus on the process of making art, enjoying and being fully with that experience of touching the art materials, of looking at what's going to come out in the image. If you do that, I would say that's an awesome way to really take care of yourself through a creative medium.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Yeah, because for the assignment that we watched your video for, we did this experiential about exploring our emotional pain, and yeah, I got to sit down and just see my internal mind from a third point of view, and that really helps with self-inquiry, and it really calms me down because I'm trying to like visualize a part of myself, and it really calms me down at the moment. And yeah, I can see that material and this kind of art therapy approach really helps with self-care. Yeah.
Definitely. And maybe if I can add a little bit to that, the reason why that helps is because when you are making art, maybe, for example, about your pain or maybe a stressful emotion, then you are in a way distancing yourself a little bit from that emotion, right? First, you have to distance a little bit to kind of visualize what that looks like, right? And put that on paper, whatever surface you're working on. So the art making itself actually naturally gives you that distance, naturally gives you that kind of space to connect with your emotions, but at the same time look at it from from not an attached place, right? The problem with emotions is that we're often consumed by it. We're often overwhelmed by it. And we're like, oh, take this out of me, right? Right? We're trying to run away. But the more that we run away, the more that it's there within ourselves. And so when you make art about that emotion, let's say, then you are making space and time to look at that emotion almost from like a third point of view, right? Third person point of view. And in a way, it's more objective, but also in a way, it's more connecting with your emotions in a calm and safe way. So yeah, totally makes sense that you felt better or you felt calm with that exercise.
Yeah, and also by distancing myself from my emotion, it's it's a non-judgmental way to experience that emotion. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so true.
yeah. I have another question. So if I'm so excited to start my career. So if this is what I feel, um, so I'm so excited that I want to start this tomorrow. What would I need to do to get out for as my first step?
Mhm. So if you wanted to be an art therapist, right? Okay. So the first step is, I think, to learn more about what art therapy is. If that's through books, that's okay. But I would say through experience is the best way, really, because no matter how much we talk about something, it's just all in our heads, right? And sometimes that doesn't what that's not really what makes the difference. What makes the difference is actually feeling it, touching it, being in that experience that really makes sense for us. So I would say if you can volunteer somewhere where there is art therapy, volunteer to shadow an art therapist, or maybe even attend a workshop or conference about art therapy where you can speak to art therapist. If you can just expose yourself to art therapy in those ways, I would say that would be like the best kind of approach to start. So if you can look for workshops, maybe look for if you can, like maybe even a session, but that's not necessary. But you can, maybe find volunteer opportunities as well. So I would say that is the first thing. Maybe that might be the most challenging thing because there's not much available. But even if it's online, I think that will be a great opportunity.
Yeah, I really agree with this idea because I think art therapy really has to focus on the situation of each individual instead of just looking at books, especially when these books are mostly based on the very Western ideas
Mhm.
of art therapy, and it's like when we facing people from a different culture, it's kind of difficult to apply those theories into practice. Yeah.
True. Yeah. So I think that there's a lot to learn when you actually see how art therapy is done locally as well. Yeah, definitely.
This conversation has made me just want to explore art therapy now. I'm excited for this. I really could. I already when y'all were talking about it, I was visualizing myself like detaching from my emotions and seeing it, and I was like, wow, that I felt that. Like I felt that in my chest. So that was beautiful. Well, in my heart. Let's say my heart. I felt that in my heart. Um, well, as we come to the end of the podcast, as much as I don't want it to end, to learn more about art therapy, uh, let's talk. I'm gonna change the gears a little bit to one of our famous questions, I guess, that everyone has to answer. But if you had to describe the last few days or week
Mhm.
based on an artist, a song, or an album, which one would you pick and why? And since you are the guest, you can decide if you want to answer first or if you want to pass it to someone else to answer first.
Um, can I pass it first?
Right. It's you, Bife.
Um, that's a hard question. I I guess I'll go with Ariana Grande's Break Free because that's my wish. I'm having a final period in my school right now, and I really want to break free from all of my schoolworks. So yeah, I'm gonna you choose that to represent my feeling.
I love that. That's a good one. I'm gonna pick. Hmm, that's a good one. Uh, I think the last song that I listen to all the time is this song called "Tears of Joy" by Rick Ross,
Mm,
and it has to do with pain and happiness and the same day to day challenges existing. And one thing I always talk about, which one newer term that I've really come to find and love, is this idea of duality, and having multiple emotions or things exist in one space and being able to understand that that is a real thing rather than saying like only this exists or this exists right now. And that's what the whole song talks about, as his journey from being a broke rapper to having this dream to now living fully within that dream, the duality in that space of dealing with the same problems when you were broke as you turned successful. So um, I think that song is right on par for our conversation. But yeah.
mm. That's such a interesting song. I must listen to it. um, I was thinking, I don't know if this is like 100% on point, but I think I keep coming back to the melody of Beatles, Let It Be. But I think for the past several days, I've been kind of really focusing on transitioning my business and kind of looking at a different or having a different vision for my business from where I have been so far and how I have done things so far. So it was a lot of like just witnessing and noticing the things that are not aligning with me. And this was not just business, but like, you know, as I was updating myself with the world news or like, right, everything that's going on around me, I was just feeling, okay, I'm witnessing things that are not aligned with me. And I think that's the reason maybe let it be came to my mind, right? Like letting those be, but also I know I'm forming my own vision for what I really want and kind of taking steps towards that. Even if I know where I am now is not where I want to be later on. So yeah, but I love this question. I love this.
Yeah, no, it always makes us dig deeper into
Mhm.
ourselves and like what we're doing. And self-actualization is one thing that we always talk about. Not always. One thing that I've actually started to understand a little bit more within our internship, and that's our key, is for
Mhm.
people to realize what they're doing and what they're existing in, and how they're coming up with ideas to formulate what the future looks like for themselves. And I think it's a beautiful thing once you like, once it clicks in your brain and you have
Right,
realized like, oh, this is it. I
right.
think that defines what we're trying to build and create for our students. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is that amazing moment where you have like clarity, and the only thing to do is just go for it. Yeah,
Yeah, that was so beautiful.
yeah.
Any other questions that you have, Bife, before we wrap up?
No, I don't have further questions. Thank you.
Okay. Well, one thing we always like to do is give everyone and our guests a round of applause. So thank you so much for jumping on the podcast, and sharing your knowledge and your story. And this is just going to impact a lot of students. I know it's been impactful for Bife and exciting to have this dialogue. So we just want to thank you so much, for jumping on the podcast and being a guest.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Bife and Mama Do, for having me here. And this conversation was awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And great job again, Bife. Another ball out the park, as they would say.
Well, thank you for involving me into this conversation because I really want to learn more about art therapy.
That's beautiful. And thank you to our guests for listening. Whether this is your morning routine, thing you do in the afternoon, um, we are out. Skr skr.